All right, so section 3.4 is called Find an Equation of a Line. And so we'll start with the one that you guys are all most familiar with and that you probably can say in your sleep, basically called the Slope-Intercept Form. And that starts with y equals, who wants to finish it for me?
MXB.
There we go. Y equals mx plus b. This one's very useful for graphing. You just plug in the slope, plug in the y-intercept. It's good to go. Okay? Another one that's pretty useful is called the point-slope form. And it's useful when you're given a point and when you're given a slope. So that's why it's named that. But basically, it looks like this. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So the three things that you plug in here are the m, slope, same thing as slope-intercept form, and a point. So you have two numbers for your point. The x goes here for x1, and the y value goes here for y1. Okay? Then there's something called standard form. Standard form is just usually what you would either what you start with and you change into slope-intercept form, or once in a while, like what you're going to see today, they're going to ask you to put it back into standard form, and it looks like this. AX plus BY equals C. And the thing you need to know about it is that you cannot have fractions in it. The other thing you need to know is that you should be able to go between all three of these forms. So you can start with something in point slope, change it to slope-intercept, change it to standard, start in standard, go to slope-intercept, go to point slope. You should be able to move around, basically, between the three forms. All right? Example number 1. I'm going to give you some information, and I want you to write your answer in point slope form. Luckily, that's the two things I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you a point, and I'm going to give you a slope. So the point P is at 4, negative 3, and the slope, M, is at negative 2/5. So with the point, the first value is obviously always your x1, second value is always your y1, and your m is your m. Okay, so if you start with the point slope up here, point slope form up here in green, you're going to take the y minus the y value, which in this case is negative 3. So I'm going to change this from minus to plus. That's going to be equal to the m, which they gave us, negative 2/5. Then in parentheses, we're going to write x minus the x value. The x value is 4, so you just plug in 4. Okay? Super, super easy. And you stop there. If it asks for it in point slope, you're good. You're done. Okay? It feels so easy, like you should be doing more. All right. Example number 2 gets a little bit harder, but not much. This time, I want you to finish in standard form. But that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to start in standard form. You're going to use what you're given. So here's what you're going to be given. 2 points. We'll call this point Q, and it's going to be at 1, negative 2. And point R is going to be at 5, 1. So you want to look at your options. You have the option of putting it into slope-intercept form or point-slope form. Based on what you're given, which one will be better? to start with. Most of you would lean toward slope-intercept because you're most comfortable with it. But what about point-slope form? You're given at least 1 point, but can you get the slope? Yes, you can get the slope by using the slope formula that we learned yesterday. So let's do that first. We're going to find the m by doing the y value minus the y value. So 1 minus negative 2 over the x value minus the x value. So 5 minus 1. And then just simplify. When you have minus minus, change it to plus plus. So 1 plus 2 is 3. 5 minus 1 is 4. Check to see if you can reduce it. You can't. So that's your m. Now we're going to take this and put this in point-slope form. You can pick either point. You can use this point or you can use this point. Which one do you want to use? The first one. Okay, so this is going to be our x1, and this is going to be our y1, and this is obviously going to be our m. So we're going to have y minus the y value, which is negative 2, so I'm going to change this to plus 2, equals the slope, which is 3/4, times the x minus the x value, which in this case is 1. Okay? So now we've got it in point-slope form, but we want to finish in standard form. We can't have what? Fractions, okay? So let's deal with that. We've got a fraction right here of 3/4. So we'll deal with that in just a second. Let's distribute it first. So we're going to have y plus 2 equals 3/4 x minus 3/4. So we need to get rid of that denominator, right? The denominator 4, which means it's essentially being divided by 4. So what's the inverse operation of dividing by 4? Multiply by 4. So I need to multiply this whole side by 4. And I need to multiply this whole side by 4. On the left, I just need to distribute. So 4 times y is 4y. And 4 times 2 is 8. Left side's pretty easy. On the right side, the 4 is going to cancel with the denominator and leave us with 3x. And then the 4 is going to cancel with this denominator as well and leave us with minus 3. Okay? Now we don't have any fractions. Now we just need to get it into the standard form. Which term comes first? The one with the x. Okay, so right now it's on the right side. So I'm going to subtract 3x to move it over to the left side. And you'll also notice that the c, that's the numeric part, is on the right. So this plus 8, I'm going to subtract it to move it over to the other side. So I'm going to have my x and my y on the left, and I'm just going to have a number on the right, which is what we want. Okay? So these cancel, and we have negative 3x plus 4y equals negative 11. Now, sometimes, depending on what book you're using or who you ask, you will see the answer like this, or you'll see it where they like the leading coefficient to be positive. So notice that there's a negative out front. When you need to change it, you actually have to switch signs on everything. So you might see, if you go to check your answer, you might see 3x minus 4y equals positive 11. I've seen it both ways. Just know that if you are checking your answer and you see everything opposite of what you wrote as your answer, it's the same. These are considered equivalent. It's just like kind of a preference thing. Okay? Any questions on that? I think I have one more thing to talk about, and that is talking about parallel versus perpendicular. When you're comparing two lines, or you'll be given a line and you're asked to give another line that's parallel or another line that's perpendicular, or one of each, okay? So parallel, you have two lines and they're parallel, they're going to have what kinds of slopes? Same. That one's easy. Okay? What about perpendicular? Right? So you can either call it opposite reciprocal. I like to call it negative reciprocal. Basically means the same thing. Okay? There's also neither. Okay? So if you have two lines, you can compare their slopes. If they're the same, you say they're parallel. If they're negative reciprocals, you say they're perpendicular. If they're neither, they're neither. All right? So we're going to do one more example, and we're going to be given a line, and we're going to find a line that's parallel and a line that's perpendicular. Okay. So this is example number 3. So this one has point P, which is at 3, -2, and you're given the equation 2x minus 3y equals 3. Yep. So what form is that in? That's in standard. The best way for you to tell what the slope is to change it to slope-intercept form, right? Because that's going to be obvious what the slope is. So let's do that. So by subtracting 2x from both sides, divide everything by -3. And then we have y equals, if you have a negative divided by a negative, change it to plus plus, which makes it positive 2/3 x. And then positive 3 divided by -3 is -1. Okay? All right. So we have a slope of 2/3, and we have a y-intercept of -3. But this y-intercept, b, doesn't necessarily go through this point. Okay, so we actually have to have this line go through this point. So we're going to take this -1 and change it to b. So we're going to say y equals 2/3 x plus b. Because we actually need to plug in this point. So this is going to be our x1 and our y1. So that y1 is -2. We're going to plug in -2 there. We're going to have 2/3 times our x, which is 3. And we'll figure out what our new y-intercept is. Now, if you change this 3 to 3/1, you can see that we're going to cancel there. So that makes it a little bit easier. We have -2 equal to 2 plus b. And then when you subtract 2 from both sides, you get b equals -4. Okay? If it doesn't tell you it has to go through a particular point, you don't need to do that step. But if it tells you it has to go through a particular point, then you have to do that. Okay. So now we just need to take our new equation, which is going to be y equals 2/3 x plus, this is negative, so -4. That's our new equation. And we need to find a line that's parallel to that equation. And we need to find a line that's perpendicular. Okay? So parallel, you guys told me, going to have the same slope. Right? So we need to come up with a line that has the same slope. So we're going to say y equals 2/3 x. Whoops. Got the wrong spot. And then you can change this to any number you want. You could say